I had a sort of epiphany yesterday when listening to Jamie Smith from Control Shift. He said, PIMs are all about giving people agency. And I think that's the illusion we are creating, that PIMs are giving people agency. So I'm going to spoil a bit the content of this presentation. I think we are discussing the wrong problem and we are discussing the wrong solution. I don't think it's about data, I think it's about agency, and I don't think it's about buying, but I think it's about creating. This is a special talk with a lot of philosophical angles to it. It's the first time I'm giving this in public, so there's a lot of new material. So please bear with me. First of all, I have my terms and conditions that apply to this presentation. So here are my terms and conditions. By viewing this presentation, you agree with my terms and conditions, and I can do whatever I want with the data I collect from you, and I may charge you for this service in the future, and in case of dispute, the Belgian law will apply. So push, agree, or cancel. So if you don't like this, you can leave the room now. I have used this in some other presentations, and I can tell you, nobody ever left the room. Come and see next week. What you see here is a trailer that I made for a performance that I would like to do in 2017 about agency. And to use only my own artwork and my own musical compositions and my own poetry and bring it live. This painting is from Peter Bruegel the Elder, and it's called The Blind Lead the Blind. Sometimes at this conference I had the feeling that the tribe leads the tribe. So it's the tribe talking to the tribe, and it's basically believers talking to believers. So I think we need to inject a little bit of controversy in this conversation. And the blind lead the blind is also something that I'm coming across a lot. I'm part of an innovation team in a big company, and when I talk to the executives, I feel like the blind are leading the blind. But what's more important about this painting is the chapel that is at the end of the horizon. That chapel exists. It exists 10 kilometers west of Brussels in a little town called Sint-Annapede. And it happens to be the place where I grew up the first 25 years of my life. So this presentation is also a little bit for me going back to my roots. And I'm not an IT guy, I'm an architect. I was trained as an architect, I never did the profession. I'm a dropout from school. But I did art, architecture, and not the engineering architecture, but the artistic architecture where you could create and dream buildings that never had to be built, which is important in the context of this presentation. The other piece is this picture. It's a poster from an exposition in Barcelona, I think, in 2013, an exposition about George Méliès. Who knows who is George Méliès? I see 1, 2, 3, 4 hands. That's great. So George Méliès was a pioneer, the pioneer that invented basically the cinematographic effects. Yeah? So creating the illusion that you can land on the moon through effects. But there was something else about George Méliès. When I was in that exhibition, we had these sort of headsets, and the guide, the lady in the headset was saying, and George Méliès' motto in life was to make other people dream. I said, damn. A couple of years ago, I got the opportunity to go through a personal development journey, basically a quest for purpose, and where I landed was also, I want to inspire other people to dream. So that's my value stick when I'm doing things. Am I still making you dream? Am I still inspiring you to dream? And a couple of my heroes are people like Buckminster Fuller, who says, I want to make my life an experiment, and I'm going to explain you, if I get the time, to what I'm doing with my life to make it an experiment. And my other hero is Carl Jung, who will come back in this presentation later. So, personal data about me. So I have a very fragmented view of myself. And so 2 years ago, I started going back to art school. So the first year I did drawing, and then last year I started painting, and I started discovering the theory of colors. So this guy is Jonathan Eaton. He's sort of the inventor of the theory of colors. And so we started studying the colors, and we got into spectra of colors and into primary, complementary, tertiary colors, and so on. So it had this nice circle of colors. But when we went through the course and the book, Jonathan Eaton was also like Buckminster Fuller, a guy who was thinking in spheres. I'm crazy about spheres. So he was taking this concept into a sphere where basically on the equator of the sphere, above the equator you have lighter colors, and below the equator you have darker colors, and on the equator you basically have all these complementary, etc. colors. So I always dreamt of my personal identity as something like a sphere I could build around my head with all that colors, and that I could release facets of myself to anyone who wants to use it with my terms and conditions within certain transaction contexts, which is basically the VRM concept of Doc Searles. And Doc, and I'm very biased, and Doc has formed me. Yeah? Like I said this morning, you have also formed me. But I'm very grateful for that. But I have evolved in my thinking. So what was great about Jonathan Eaton is that he suddenly started to think about correlation between the nodes and the colors and chords of colors. I said, wow. And of course you have that also in music, chords and tone and pitch, and that richness of harmonies, which is part of a human being. And if I bring that together with Carl Jung, who talks about collective consciousness, personal unconsciousness, etc., etc. But the key thing that I want to convey with this slide, if you look at it as a sphere again, is that what we share in the personal data community is mainly the outer shell of us, which is mainly about the way how we want to be perceived. It's basically about our ego. And what would be great if we started being able to dive deeper into the archetypes that have formed us, so that people get to know us really better. So, one point is self, me. Second aspect of this presentation is agency. When I try to explain this to my colleagues at work, and also to my wife, they said, what do you mean by agency? A travel agency, an insurance agency? No. It's agency as defined in Wikipedia as the capability to act in a given environment and seeing causal effect of your actions. So in other words, it's an action or intervention to produce a particular effect which has a lot to do with intention, as Doc has documented in his intention economy. There are some synonyms for this word. It's like action, activity, means, effect, influence, force, power, medium, intervention. So I think agency is broken. And then we use tools, and you probably think immediately about PIMS or something like that. But I would like to take you on a little journey on tools, machines, robots, etc. So a tool is basically something that is used like a hammer that is using human energy. A machine is something that is using non-human energy. And what we are seeing in the evolution is automation, which is the move from manual to machines. Okay? And then we have interface. Somebody said yesterday, I think it was in the session about blockchain, that putting the nodes on the grid was like putting like ATMs on the ATM network. And you had something to activate the ATM, which could be your card. So I think the illusion here is that you have agency over the ATM. You don't have agency. It's just an interface that is letting you do a number of things in a very narrowly defined scope as defined by the programmer of that interface. And then we can talk about robots. So what is a robot? A robot has a body, so a physical body. A robot has a mind, an algorithm that can interpret and do something with data. It has sensors, and it has energy to make the robot do what the robot has been designed for. Doc, you will like this. What is this? It's a Leica, yeah. It's, I think, the first Leica that had autofocus. So there was I know because Doc is a big fan of photography. So, but the Leica took over a task from the user to make his life easier by autofocusing. But he still didn't have agency. And so the risk that we have today, I'm making a lot of jumps here because this presentation is part of a bigger 1 hour plus sort of story, is that we think that we have bodies with minds, but I think what we are having now with surveillance, etc., it's minds controlling bodies. And the bodies, we are the bodies that are being controlled by corporations and governments. And they use techniques like algorithms, etc., 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 to make us behave as cogs in a machine. Machine as defined previously. Next dimension is extension. A lot of people say this is my extension. I would like to talk about a different extension. This is my messy table at the academy, and I have a number of tools, brushes, etc. And last year we had an exercise where the teacher asked us to make a drawing of a model with a long stick, an extension of 1.5 meters, and at the end of the extension a piece of charcoal, and to draw with your body, not with your pulse, but with your body, to try to draw on a big format, on a big canvas. And I thought that's never going to work. This is what happens. This is something I put together, and it's not about me, but this is something that gets together when you believe that the extension is helping you see the canvas, but also the periphery of the canvas and the distance that you take when looking at something and not being close to your personal data store or something like that. Then there's the element of illusion. Who knows what this is? Young people will know this. So there are no young people here. Yeah, Tomorrowland, yes, Tomorrowland. which is a dance festival in a city close to Antwerp, a city called Boom. I'm serious, the city is called Boom. And they play for 3 days, boom, boom, boom music. It's a big fest. But it looks very much like Disneyland. It's an artificial. It's an illusion. This is another big DJ team from Belgium, Dimitri Vegas. This is sort of show they set up. Very exposing, lots of confetti and lights and sound and boom. But it's not real. It's absolutely not real. And you get to a situation where somebody who is real is considered as a sociopath. Or you get very sad situations of illusion of marriage. People are texting to each other, or even worse, in the Rubens Museum, sitting next to this fantastic painting and not having seen the reality because they think the reality is on their phone. Or Pokemon. So, I think we are landing into a new reality, and this guy is called Magritte, one of the famous surrealist painters. If you ever have the chance in Brussels to visit that museum, it's really very well done. Fantastic experience. But Magritte was a surrealist, and at that exposition there's a lot of his one-liners that are documented everywhere on the wall. And one I picked out here, surrealism is the immediate knowledge of reality. Like this immediate knowledge of reality, or even worse, this notion of reality. I'm going to play a video here of Sesame Credit, just for 3 minutes.
You have 2.
I have 2 minutes. I'm not going to play it then. I'm skipping that video,
Okay.
and I'm going to this guy.
Doing a privacy change for 350 million users
Yeah.
is a really, it's not the
Somewhat
type of
painful,
thing
yeah.
that a lot of companies would do. We decided that these would be the social norms now, and we just went for it.
So doing a privacy change for X million of users, it's an easy thing to do. It's something we decide. We decide what are the social norms. So I think that the real discussion is about norms and who sets the norms and who polices the norms and who awards, rewards, and who creates penalties for not behaving the norms. And what sort of norms am I talking here about? I mean, only on this part I could spend like 15 minutes. I have norms here about system design. I have norms here about digital ethics. I have norms here about the laws of identity. I have laws here about humanistic behavior. So one example for digital ethics, because the speaker just before me, and it's not because of that speaker, but it's a good context of insurance. A digital ethic consideration in insurance could be, do you ask somebody who smokes to pay more for insurance or not? Or do you let play the commons and the spreading of risk as a way to cover everybody at equal terms? That's a digital ethics consideration. Or if you build financial apps, or if you build other apps, are you sure that the app is not built in a way that it creates addictive behavior, which is harming the individual that is using that application? So who controls them? Do you want to have a Star Trek type of organization, or Facebook together with DARPA, or a sort of FDA control agency? The more that public becomes private, and then you have this guy, I mean, it's not GAFA, but it's Alibaba, one of the biggest companies in China, who says digitization of society is becoming a key means for increased corporatocracy, and he says we are going to decide what are the norms and how we want to frame e-commerce rules. An alternative way of looking at it, and I really recommend you to check out this guy, it's to get society back in the loop. So I don't think that governments can solve this. I don't think that organizations can solve this. But a sort of communal way of society in the loop that is giving direct feedback loops of what is ethical behavior, etc., and not.
Peter, you've asked me
Yep.
to cut you after 20 minutes.
Yep.
So I'll do it after 21. That means you
Yep.
still have 1.
Okay? So I'm done. So the conclusion is, and I'm quickly going through that conclusion, that we need a new Magna Carta, we need society in the loop, we need digital ethical norms, we need creative orientation, and I'm going to use the 1 minute to explain that. There is a book called The Path of Least Resistance, which is talking about two orientations, the reactive responsive orientation and the creative orientations. Reactive response is what you all have been trained for. It's basically, how do I solve a problem? What is the problem I'm trying to solve? Creative orientation is about knowing what I want and to create it. So in that sense, I think it's not about data. I think it's about agency and knowing what you want to create. And so this could be a title for your next conference. Thank you very much.